So they're not going to go out there, spend all that money on a head coach, redo their whole stadium, all for nothing.
What are
All
you
that.
talking about? You guys just spent a
Yep.
bunch of money on a new coach. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Those Guys Podcast, brought to you by Chris and Troy. Hey, Troy, what's going on, man?
Hey, dude. I think it feels a little bit different, right? These last couple episodes that we've been filming, we've always been sharing this screen with someone else, so always having to prepare and all that. So it's cool to be back with just us right now.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm excited. The interviews have been great, but it is nice sometimes just to go back to a traditional episode and discuss some of the cool things that we have in store. So, with that being said, Troy, first things first, what has been your thought about our coaches series? We've interviewed a lot of really dynamic and unique coaches. So, what have been your overall takeaways?
Well, I think we weren't planning for it to be as big as it kind of became, right? So
Yes.
early on, we wanted to bring on a couple of, guest speakers, and it seems like everyone really enjoyed those coaching series along with ourselves. I mean, I think it's cool to see coaches kind of in a different light. I think we're used to seeing them in their coaching realm, right? In coaching mode all the time. But we kind of got to dive down into you know, like why are they the way that they are, why they have the philosophy that they push onto these kids, and basically you get to learn a lot about them. And every single one of our coaches that have joined our show, I had a good time with. I learned so much about him. I thought I knew Coach Lopez really well, but man, we got to know him on a different level. And I think it was cool to see all the sacrifices that these guys do make, and you realize how time consuming coaching truly is, and how much time they spend away from their families. But they're on a unique transition right now where they're building their programs up. I know, Centennial and Las Cruces High, they had a pretty good season last year. And obviously Cruces, took it to state, almost almost took the title there, and just fell short at the very end. But they're off to rebuilding, right? They lost a lot of their guys. So, and Centennial's in the same process. I know Coach Frias, that was kind of an interesting one for me, just because we were talking to him whenever he had just resigned from Chaparral, and then we didn't know he was going to be the coach at Mayfield, and we didn't know he was going to be the guy. And Mayfield picks him up, so it's cool to see what he's done with that program so far. I think they're more active on social media now. I think he has given them from what I can tell already, he's given them a spark that maybe that program needs, and I think he's going to make it pretty exciting for for that program. And I think that was a good hire. I'm stoked to see what he does, but also, to see what Coach Fascio has done at Gadsden. Me and you have been following up with all their stuff lately. We've
Yes.
been seeing everything that they post. Chris, you remember this whenever we were in high school. And not to talk bad about anyone or anything like that, but their program wasn't known to be very productive out in the football field, right? So
Hmm.
he has these guys firing on all cylinders. I mean, you look at, the pictures that they're posting and stuff. These kids, they have, first of all, the numbers are there. They actually have enough kids to have a varsity football team, right? Like, usually they were struggling. What Coach Fascio told us, that, they were struggling with depth at one point, getting kids to practice. It looks like these kids are having fun. And
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest takeaways that I have gotten from, watching their program grow, and just seeing all these coaches. And they're all going to kind of face some type of adversity throughout this year. We got Michael Hugin coming back, and he's going to take over a struggling program up in Monzano. And man, I think it's pretty cool to kind of see, like, everything kind of comes full circle. I saw Jacob Brenegas and his crew up there helping them out, doing their strength and conditioning stuff. So it's just been cool to see all that come full circle, kind of learn about these coaches, learn, just talk about how they are normal human beings just like us, and they want the best for their kids. And that they really care about their programs, every single one of them. And even I definitely want to mention, Coach Guardiola too at New Mexico Highlands. It's hard to have their type of schedule because they're always in meetings, setting up practices, setting up film sessions, doing, the ins and outs, and they are building a solid Division II program in the state. So, man, I thank him for coming on the show as well, and I think we had a good mixture of, high school and college, and we're gonna continue to grow that and hopefully have a couple more college coaches on, a couple more players on, and go from there. What were some kind of your favorite moments during that segment?
Definitely. So first and foremost, before I answer that, Troy, don't ever say normal and you in the same sentence, man, because you're far from normal. So let's just get that out there for our viewers, man. I don't even know if Troy's human. I think he's alien or some type of extraterrestrial creature, but
I get that a lot, Chris. Yeah, I was definitely not known for being normal.
definitely. But no, to answer your question, Troy, I think of the interviews in totality, I mean, I liked them all. But I think my favorite parts were just hearing each of the coaches' journeys to becoming a coach. That was really fascinating to me because most of them, even though different places they grew up, different sports, different backgrounds, they all kind of had a similar trajectory, right? Most of them were competitors in high school, kind of had this interest or this hunger to go further in football. Some of them played at the college level, some of them didn't. But you see how they wanted to become coaches and they wanted to start right away. And it was just neat to hear about how they sat. Many of our coaches in the coaching series sat underneath these legendary coaches and really picked up a lot of nuances. So when they finally took over as head coaches, they kind of took a piece from different types of coaches and kind of built their own special philosophy, right, Troy? No, one in particular that sticks out is Fascio. To hear how, he sat under the Bradleys and he learned from different coaches around the state. And then to just see how he kind of brings that old school mentality, but also kind of with that new age being a player's coach ability. I think it's neat to see what he's doing at Gadsden. I mean, you look online, you look at the community, they're fully bought in. Gadsden football, it's a pride of Anthony, New Mexico, and you just see how the whole town is excited to see what they're going to do. They're behind that program. The kids look good. They're excited. They're ready to take the next step to potentially compete or win a blue trophy. So, shout out to Gadsden. Shout out to Coach Fascia on what he's going to do. I'm excited to see what Coach Michael Hoguin does with Manzano. It looks like between him bringing the people from Built up there to work with performance, as well as just some of the other things that I'm seeing on social media from their program, he's getting those kids bought in. And I think they're going to compete this year and they're going to do a pretty good job and probably surprise some people in up there in the Albuquerque area. So I'm excited to see them along those same lines, Troy. I'm also excited to see Mayfield and Coach Frias. I mean, we had a dynamic interview with them when he just resigned as the Chaparral head football coach. And you could just tell the excitement and the hunger he has for coaching football. And this was at a time where he didn't know what his next coaching gig was going to be. So just hearing that interview, then to see him get hired at Mayfield, and then to see all the neat things that he's doing in the off season, they're rebranding, saying that they're reestablished this year. Looking at how they're working out, looking at the drills they're doing, looking at kind of the brotherhood that he's having those kids form. I'm excited to see what the product. I'm excited to see the product that they put out on the field. I feel like I feel like Mayfield this year under Coach Frias, they're going to be flowing, Troy. I think they're going to be hitting hard, flying to the ball on defense. Offensively, I think that you're going to see a lot of exciting runs. I think he's going to get some of that passing game in there, and Mayfield's going to shock some people this year. And then I'll end with this, Troy. With Cruces and Centennial, we're kind of know what we're getting with them, right? they're going to always be a district favorite for their particular district in the state. Those two programs are always going to be a playoff favorite under Lopez and Ocampo. But I'm curious to just see kind of how it looks. Centennial, they have some good kids coming back, but at the same time, they lost a couple of defensive players that were paramount to their success last year. Of course, Las Cruces High, they were senior heavy last season, and they were, a touchdown away from being state champs. So we'll see how they reload, Troy. So a lot of really, really interesting and dynamic storylines going into this year in the Valley and in Las Cruces.
Yeah, I really got to learn a lot about a lot of those programs. Obviously talking with Coach Fascio and stuff, kind of learning about, where he kind of came from and how he built that program. Same with Coach Frias coming from Chaparral. Those are two programs that I didn't follow up with as much. Well, I started following up with Gaston as soon as Fascio kind of took it over, but with Chaparral, I mean, man, that was just one that you didn't really pay attention to. But now we're kind of seeing some stuff pop up on their page and kind of seeing how they train, seeing, you know what I mean, seeing all that type of stuff. So I'm excited for them. I'm excited for all the schools that have worked with us, and we're excited to kind of give you guys the exposure that that you guys have been seeking too, because I think you guys deserve it. I think the kids deserve it. You guys are the ones putting in the work and everything. But Coach Chris, you brought up a good point earlier. I think all those coaches talking about all the legendary coaches that they've worked with and everything. And that kind of brings me back to the point that I made about it being a full circle moment. We talked to Michael Hugin about taking that job in Manzano, but we had Coach Ocampo come on, and Michael Higuin coached under Ocampo, and he was involved in that program. So I think, yeah, it's cool to just see how everyone was just intertwined with each other and how small the coaching community kind of truly is out there. But yeah, no, I'm excited to see some big things happen with all the high schools. So I think it's going to be a pretty fun year, an interesting year, and I'm definitely going to keep more eyes out on the games this year, because I feel like I'm invested, right? So yeah, it's gonna be a fun season.
And then along with that, Troy, so from various sources, I'm hearing that Oregon Mountain High School, their football program, they're switching a lot of things up. They're bringing a lot of D1 coaches in. They're really kind of just switching up the offense. So hopefully we could bring you all some insights on what's going on with that Oregon Mountain program. But don't forget about them. They might be a wild card this year. I don't have a lot of information, Troy, but the bit that I do have, let's just say it's going to get interesting. It's going to get
Yeah,
interesting this year.
no, I agree. And also, I got to give a shout out to Coach Buckingham right now, because that man he has been supporting our page,
Yes. Shout
ever
out to Coach
since.
Bunky now.
Yeah, so hopefully we can get some of those guys at Oregon Mountain on our show. But we enjoy that. We definitely appreciate you guys supporting our page, and we want to continue to keep growing this page. But we also want to bring you good content with college football, small college campuses around the nation, and just kind of just keep you updated. But we're having a great time with it.
Definitely.
So
Hey,
yeah,
Troy,
no, what's up?
real quick, before we transition to kind of our next segment, I wanted to ask you this because you went through this process, right? Of course, you played under a legendary coach and, of course, Coach Miller. And then you were on the other side getting recruited, going through the recruiting process, played for Western as well as a few other programs. So when Coach Guardiola came on and he was telling us kind of what they look for when they're recruiting, was that kind of similar when you were being recruited? Did coaches kind of tell you some of those same attributes that he was describing? That's what they were looking for?
Yeah, man. I think for me it was a little bit different because social media was on the rise back then, but not everyone had Twitter, not everyone had X. Huddle was starting to become a thing.
Hmm.
I was kind of in that weird transition phase where we were sending DVDs out to schools and universities and stuff like that. And if you do that, there's a chance that DVD gets lost, right? I mean,
Sure.
there's a chance that there's never a coach that watches it. I mean, I think you remember seeing me at the field house just trying to make my highlight video down, burning the CDs and stuff and sending them out. Well, then the following year, that's when Huddle comes out and you're sending them everything. I will say that coaches, they are different. So they are looking for, different things. They all run different schemes. And that's something that I wish I would have paid attention to a little bit more. I remember I was getting recruited by Eastern Arizona College. They were like an old school, like wishbone type of offense, right? And, in Cruces High, we did a little bit more of the spread. So probably, I would fit in the wishbone pretty easily. Same with Eastern New Mexico and stuff. And I want to say Western New Mexico, the school that I ended up signing with, they were more of like a pro style offense, but they were definitely trying to sling the ball around a lot more. So they all recruit different attributes. They're all looking for different things, but definitely a good thing to pay attention to now is your social media. What are you guys putting out there? Because coaches do pay attention to that. And, even getting out of college football, your employers are going to start paying attention to that as well. So
Mm.
you definitely want to make sure you watch what you put on social media. But I think what's important now is, especially because these coaches, their inbox are getting flooded with recruits and, recruits from all across the nation. I think it's important to kind of stay up to date with, your daily highlights, whether it's at practice, whether it's in a game. Make the video short, make it, easy for them to access. That way they could kind of see what they're looking for. So, I'll use offensive line as, my I'll kind of talk a little bit about that as my example. If you're an offensive lineman, they're gonna want to see you run block, right? They want to see you man up, just straight up drive block somebody, but they also want to see how well you can get to the second level. Then they want to see a little bit of your pass block. They want to see a little bit, if you're a guard and you're pulling, they want to see how well you pull, how well you could, square up your hips and get around the center and get on the other side of the field. They're all looking for different things, and they all want to find, different things or different people that are going to fit their scheme well. You could be a heck of an athlete, but you might not fit a particular scheme very well, if that makes sense.
It does, right? No, and that's so important is understanding what programs run which schemes and to see if your skill set fits into that scheme or even just the way you were coached, right? If you're coached in a run heavy offense, you might be a really great run blocker, but you might have to work on your pass blocking skills if you go to a program that's more pass oriented, right? So it just
Yeah.
depends. Or, for example, so there's, programs where they do a lot of down blocking. And if you're not used to down blocking a bunch, that's a certain technique you're going to have to learn.
Yeah, and man, each coach is different. So I went I went to 4 different schools and everyone taught something completely different. It felt like the scheme was, different on each at each school. Now, I will say that obviously there's some similarities in some aspects, but also what you want to pay attention to too is like going through the process, the recruiting process is, you know, how does like their off-season program look like? How does, when they're in season, how does the workout schedule look like? Stuff like that. We at Western New Mexico didn't have a strength and conditioning coordinator. The head coach, Adam Clark, who he's now at Sacramento State, so he's doing his thing up there. But he was actually our strength guy. So I know he did a lot of strength and conditioning with Colorado School of Mines. So he kind of just used the same program. I thought it was a pretty solid program, but our weight room was so small that they had to break it up in like 4 or 5 different groups throughout the day and to obviously accommodate everyone's schedule. Uh, but then you go to the junior college route, and the junior college route's a little bit different because, man, they had like an open gym, but there wasn't really any like format to follow. There was no program to actually follow. They had a coach there, but it wasn't like a organized team type of lift. You know what I mean? It was just like, hey, make sure you're kind of working on this, you're staying conditioned because, we start workouts on this date or whatever. And I don't know if it's because at the JUCO level, there's so many kids all at once. It's hard to kind of narrow it down on who's going to actually be on the team or who's not. But I just remember like each off season, even in the summer, man, I enrolled into like a PE class and it was just a group of us, like, I mean, a large group of us just crammed in this small, weight room. everyone's just flying around, just doing different things. So, to me, I think it's important to get into an institution or a program that's similar to what you're used to. I tell people this all the time. I think I was spoiled at Las Cruces High because I remember whenever we started summer workouts, I mean, it was like Christmas, right? You go to your locker, you're getting, we have cleats, we have grays, we have, all this stuff. And there's some programs, even at the college level, I could use the JUCO levels, comparison. You ain't getting any of that. So man, it's just cool to pay attention to that stuff. And, especially as like a young athlete, I know this is something that we harp on too. Like, we want to be a resource for you guys going through this process.
Sure.
Give you any insight that we possibly can. And that was kind of like the purpose of us wanting to we wanted to get people excited about, small school football, basically. And, areas that don't get a lot of coverage. That's what we wanted to do. So, but
Definitely. Let me try. So I have two questions for you. First question is, in light of just the climate of college football and everything going on with that, would you recommend local athletes from New Mexico to walk on to some of these bigger programs if they have an opportunity, or if they didn't receive a scholarship? Second question is, how important are college camps, and what would you recommend when these athletes are choosing what camp to go to?
yeah, dude, that's a good question. So, kind of evaluating my situation, what I went through, it was a little bit different. I got hurt, tore my ACL twice, back to back years. So I look back and I'm like, okay, I went from Western New Mexico where I was on scholarship to a junior college in Arizona where I mean, they basically offered me like an in-state price, basically, right? It wasn't anything crazy, but you're kind of investing at yourself at that point. So you go to that, and then I got a scholarship at an NAIA school up in Kansas. But, I didn't take a trip out there. I didn't see it. It was a different culture for me. Great school. I enjoyed it. I met a lot of good people out there, great academics, but man, it ultimately just wasn't for me. And I think I was over playing football at that time. If I was in high school, I think it would all depend on if I, if I could go back, I think I probably would have walked on to like New Mexico State uh, and kind of just tried that out just to see, where I was, at that level. But also, like, if it didn't work out, cool, man. Ultimately, I graduated from New Mexico State, right? So at least you're still taking care of your academic side of things, but you're in a program where you're getting the strength and conditioning portion down, and really I would say it just all depends on the person because there's some people that will tell you, hey, if you have a scholarship, use that scholarship and go somewhere where you're wanted. And I believe in that too. And that was kind of my logic with Western New Mexico. They were going to throw some money at me. And I was like, man, if they're willing to show me that they want me out there, I need to be out there. Right. It just ultimately just wasn't a fit for me. I think they've completely redone the school since I've been there, and it's really nice now. They redid the field and everything. It's pretty cool. But Coach Ocampo brought up a good point too. I mean, he was doing his thing at New Mexico Highlands. You know, he was going to some pretty cool places. He was competing, but they weren't as good. He ends up walking on to UNM. Had a hell of an experience, but he even said he's like, man, I don't necessarily recommend walking on to. I don't recommend our younger kids kind of walking onto these programs. I would rather them, maybe go to a different program that actually wants them. And obviously now, Chris, like the transfer rules are a lot different now.
Yeah.
Like you're actually able to transfer out pretty easy. Now, back when I did it, like if you went from an NCAA institution to, you had to go the JUCO route. Well, you had to make sure you get your associate's degree. So there was different components there. You couldn't just transfer out to another school without losing eligibility. So I think now they're trying to kind of work that out a little bit better now, which I'm kind of torn. I think it's good and bad at the same time, but we kind of saw how out of hand it got, in the college world this last year. So, but man, honestly, I would really evaluate the program. If you're going to be a walk-on, just know what to expect. You're not going to get treated well right away. You're going to have to earn everything that you get. There's times that you're probably not going to feel part of the team, but if you can go in there with that mindset and you just go in there with that dog mentality and have nothing to lose, and you could find some success doing that. So you just have to educate yourself on what it's going to be because you're not going to be treated like you're one of the guys.
No, and a good point, Troy. I mean, like you said, every experience is different. Every school is different with how they treat walk-ons. So yeah, no, good advice. And then the second part, Troy, is when when these athletes are picking college camps to go to, what are maybe some of the insights you could give them on what camps to choose or kind of what the process is when choosing a camp to go to?
Yeah, so when you're choosing a camp, guys, really focus on these smaller schools. Like if Coach Guardiola brought up a good point. He said if these in-state schools, these smaller schools aren't recruiting you, you should probably not go to like Wisconsin, LSU, Alabama. You probably shouldn't go to these camps unless you just want the experience and spend the money. But if you're actually serious about if you want to get a college scholarship, you should focus on going to now they're making it easier for everybody. They're having these satellite camps. New Mexico Highlands did it, Western did it, Eastern New Mexico did it. They're going to these high schools where you could actually register, have a camp there. You're basically doing like a combine. They're getting eyes on you so they see how you move. They'll see the measurables and all that. So they're making it easy for you. Now, for me, I kind of did a little bit of everything. I went to a big school. I went to Colorado State. They were in the Mountain West at that time. That was a fun camp. I thought I did really well there, and I stood out in some aspects, but I was too small. I showed up weighing like 220, and so they're not going to pay that much attention to you, right? Well, then I go to like a school at like New Mexico Highlands, for instance, and I went to their football camp as well. Obviously, a lot smaller, right? But I was able to get a little bit more attention at that camp just because, I fit the Division II, I guess, measurables. Same with Northern Arizona. So I got a little bit more attention there versus like I probably would have if I would have went to like an ASU camp. My nephew, so just recently he went to both New Mexico State and UNM's camp, and he lives in Texas. He plays football out there. They were focusing on going to the University of Texas camps and the LSU camps at first, and it's like, hey man, really focus on because he has the size. He's gonna pass the eye test, and that's half the battle. If you can pass the eye test, that's gonna help you out so much. And man, he's to the point now to where I told him hey, you need to focus on the Sam Houston states. You need to focus on, the Tarleton states, the New Mexico states, the UNMs, because those are the schools that are going to give you that look. Chris, I think you could agree with me on this. Texas knows who they're recruiting right now for the next 4 years. So,
Pretty much, yeah.
that's just how it is. And these schools, I mean, they could rebuild their programs in the transfer portal easily. So I think for me, you kind of have to narrow it down to where do you want to go to school? Okay. Because if you're a kid in southern New Mexico, you're probably not going to want to go to Maine, right? It's completely different. Maybe you do. I don't know. But, focus on some areas, kind of regionally like located to you, and then kind of make your decision from there. But, you're going to get good exposure at every single one of these camps. D2, FCS, D1, you're going to get good exposure there. You're going to see where you're at, and you'll have a good idea. Now, one of my biggest regrets, Chris, was I did a combine in the state of New Mexico, and it was the same day that Coach Leomidi from CSU Pueblo, he was hitting me up to go to their camp up there, right? If you know anything about CSU Pueblo, they are a D2 powerhouse.
Oh yeah.
They've won the national championship. Like they were on they were building their program, and they had a lot of undersized offensive linemen. I looked at the roster. They were one of the first schools to actually recruit me, and they had offensive linemen that were around 230, 245. That was kind of my size. That's just kind of what it was at that time. I regret not going to that I regret going to the combine and not going to that camp because I probably could have got a offer from CSU Pueblo, and it's not too far from New Mexico or anything like that. And at the time too, being a college student, it's your first time away from home. Man, you're gonna go through this weird period where you're like, dang, did I make the right mistake or did I make a mistake? Did I make the right choice? There's always just kind of it's not high school. Everyone's good. It doesn't matter at what level. So you have some real moments with yourself in your dorm room. If you're trying to decide if it's for you or not, it's completely different. So but that's kinda how I decided to kinda narrow down my camps. I just tried to do what made sense, and I thought I wanted to go to school in Colorado, focus a little bit more out there, but completely took a different direction, but, luckily I was able to still get the experience.
Definitely, Troy. Hey, and shout out to the student athletes that sent us their pictures from the camps. That was really awesome to be able to showcase you guys, seeing what you guys did at UNM and New Mexico State. And I think, Troy, as we kind of go through this process of spotlighting our student athletes, we definitely would love to see pictures from other camps as well, even if it's not UNM or NMSU. So if you attended a college camp and you want to send us a few, we'll definitely spotlight you.
Yeah, yeah, if you guys are following us, following up with what we're doing, send us those photos. Sometimes we don't get back right away. Obviously, me and Chris, we have our jobs that we have to focus on, but we'll try to get that posted for you guys as soon as we can. But that was fun. That was cool to see. It was cool to kind of see both my worlds kind of collide there. My nephew was at these camps, and I was paying attention to what he was doing, and took like checking in with my sister, seeing how everything was playing out, but also seeing everyone's videos and photos that were at the same camps. So, man, no, we appreciate you guys reaching out. There was a lot of people reaching out to us during this time, and yeah, it was pretty cool. So it was cool to see, and I think both camps received there was a lot of athletes there at both camps. So
Yes.
that's good for both programs. That means both programs are becoming, pretty successful. These I remember going to like an NMSU camp whenever I was in high school. And once again, weird transitional phase, right? So Coach Dwayne Walker, he was kind of on his way out, and they were kind of just putting things together. I remember we had the camp at Mayfield High School, and it was kind of a weird deal, but it's cool to see how structured these things are and kind of what they do for the athletes now. So if you guys got out there to the camps, man, that's awesome. Going out there and competing, it's tough to do. So, but you guys get exposed to those college coaches. That's what you want.
Definitely. So no, camps, great. Like you said, if you go to the right camp, that's a real opportunity to that's a real opportunity to showcase in front of the coaching staff. And who knows? Who knows if you have a really good outing at one of these camps and next thing you know, you're getting looked at or you're getting an official offer. So good stuff, good stuff.
And
Hey,
recruiting
Troy. Oh,
questionnaires,
God.
my bad, Chris. Recruiting questionnaires as well. That's something that you guys want to pay attention to and fill out now. And you can go on the websites and find these literally on their athletic website. So if you type in, we'll use New Mexico Highlands University, for instance, New Mexico Highlands football, whatever. Up on the top corner, usually like on the resources tab there's like recruit me forms. Fill those out. Fill as many out as you possibly can. I remember me and my dad literally spending the entire Saturday just filling out these forms all the way from schools from New Mexico to North Dakota. I mean, that's how they get your information, that they know that there's interest. A lot of these smaller schools, I mean, their budgets are tight for recruiting, right? So they're not transferring, or they're not going to each state to recruit. So if they get interest from someone in New Mexico and they're, at Valley City College, then, they're gonna try to reach out to your coach or something like that, and try to, get a hold of you. So that's something that you want to start doing now. Sometimes you got to do it multiple times, but it's cool when you start receiving some of these letters in the mail. And I still have my first one from like Shattern State, and yeah, I remember even Colorado School of Mines sent me something. I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably not gonna be on the list. So I was like, engineering school. I'm like, ooh man. So, but no, I mean, just make sure you go on those websites, fill out those recruiting questionnaires, and really, I mean, the coaches are pretty easy to talk to these days. They're leaving, their DMs open for you guys, like on Twitter or stuff like that. Sometimes you got to send out your link on Huddle pretty frequently to make sure that, they're able to see. And Sometimes you'll get responses, sometimes you won't, but that's just stuff that you have to do to kind of make yourself stand out.
No, for sure, Troy. There's always, various avenues that you can take to get looked at and to get recruited. Troy, that and kind of, based off of what we're talking about, that actually makes me think of that actually makes me think of the interview that we have coming up, which I don't want to give away who it is, but essentially we're talking to a couple of young men that they just went through the recruiting process. They had, big years at their respective high school programs. And now they're getting ready to start summer camp and their freshman year here for the fall season. So that's going to be a really, really good interview. Please tune in over the next few weeks because that just goes in line with kind of what we're trying to do with this platform. And that's not only talk about college football and some of the smaller programs, but we also want to show you guys the journey. What does it look like from the high school athlete's perspective? How does their journey and how does their process go to not only getting through their year and putting up really awesome stats and having great accomplishments with their team, but also what does that recruiting process with them look like? When they actually do get signed, what are the next steps? How does going to summer ball look like? How does their first year go? And then what we would love to do on this platform as well is interview some former players that went through, the whole college football experience. And you all could get a peek into what they had to go through and how it is going through a 2-year program or a 4-year program. We got a little bit of that with Coach Guardiola, just kind of hearing his journey through Mimi and Highlands, but we're hoping we could bring you some more interviews from former college athletes.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool too because Frias and Ocampo, they kind of brought, their backgrounds too. They had some interesting, college stories that we kind of focused on. And, one of our guest speakers that we haven't brought up, but hopefully we can get him back on the show is Aiden James. Like he was the first
Yes,
college
yes,
player,
sir. Sir.
our first guest to join the show. If you guys haven't caught that episode, you guys definitely missed out. Now, it probably looks a little ugly because it was, but that was our first guest. And hopefully we can bring him on. I think he's wrapping up his last year at Dakota State Dakota State. So man, I'm excited for him, see what happens this year and hopefully, get him back on.
Definitely, Troy. So that's one to look out for. Hopefully we can get him back on, as well as hopefully we can get Coach Frias back on and see, how it's going at Mayfield. And he could tell us about just really building this offseason and what he's looking forward to at the start of the regular season. So exciting stuff that we have on the horizon. So Troy, kind of switching back to college football, some big, big things are happening. You see that they restructured kind of NIL and the revenue sharing. We saw that the $2.8 billion lawsuit just got settled, and now college athletes are going to be able to get a piece of the revenue sharing pie. So, which means, from what I read, they're going to have kind of like a hard salary cap for each program. I think it's roughly around $20 million with projections of going up every year. Of course, obviously, not every college program is going to have enough money to, fit that $20 million payroll. But for those programs like the LSUs, the Texas is, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, maybe this isn't a bad thing because you don't have a program like Ohio State spending $100 million on player salaries compared to, maybe a program like ASU that could only pony up $10 million or so on and so forth, right, Troy? So what are your thoughts kind of on the restructuring of college football and now that they have revenue sharing and now that they kind of have these salary cap rules? What is your thoughts, Troy?
Look, man, I think these players do need to get paid. Obviously, the NCAA has been making so much money off these guys for so long, and I'm all about it. But I'm also all about having like a cap and having some structure with the whole NIL thing. Just because I think it could easily get out of hand. You have those bigger schools just dumping a crazy amount of money on players, and man, it's it sucks because people be like, oh well, that's unfair, this that, but I mean, those are prestige, like prestige programs to play for, right? Getting to a place like LSU, Ohio State, man, those are the premier top dog, programs that make the most. I mean, they have a solidified fan base that's willing to dump whatever money they need to throughout the season to, have a great athletic department, versus like these smaller schools like NMSU. It's probably not as much, right? But man, I don't think it's a bad thing to kind of cap these teams and tell them like, hey man, this is all you guys got for recruiting. I think Lane Kiffin, I think they were trying to give him like what, 70 mil or something for NIL, something like that. It was something ridiculous.
I'll get to
So
him in a bit, Troy.
so man, I am not against a cap. I think NIL has definitely evened the playing field a little bit more, and the transfer rules and stuff like that have definitely evened the playing field a little bit more. I mean, man, who would have thought, 7 years ago, and not even 7 years ago, let's say 3 years ago, you tell me Tulane was going to make the playoffs. I mean, I would have said that you're lying on that. But obviously, some of these schools are able to kind of invest a little bit more in their athletes, and they're going to have a pretty solid product on the field. But man, I'm all for like caps, and we'll see. I think there still needs to be some more things in place for the NIL. I think it's hard to track, and I think there was a lot of schools that were kind of confused on like where their money was actually going, right? Because they were just throwing money out there towards these players left and right. So I think it'll be better to kind of have a little bit more of that structure in place.
Troy, I agree with that, and I think there needs to be more structure, potentially a commissioner, because at this point, Troy, we need to stop calling it amateur athletics. At this point, it's really professional.
Yeah.
It's it's essentially college football is essentially the minor league for the NFL. Let's be honest. So they just need to embrace that and set it up as the. What I would like to see potentially, Troy, is because everybody's in different conferences, especially in the Power Four, regional rivalries and regional games really don't matter anymore, I guess. We grew up with them. We grew up where, your Pac-10 or your Pac-12 schools, they were in the western area of the country. Geographically, right? It made sense. Pacific. Your Mountain West teams were typically are your WAC teams. They were typically, again, in the western area of the country. Same with the ACC, was in that Atlantic coast area. It made sense, right, Troy? Geographically, it made sense. And right, because a lot of these programs back then, they had to bus the games, or if they did fly, it's expensive to fly across country. So you needed regional flights. But it seems like now, with how much money is being pumped, what conference you're in really doesn't matter. Especially if you're a Power Four team. You have teams in California, playing in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, Trey, honestly, I almost want to get rid of the conferences and just almost have like divisions. And for the Power Four teams, almost have like a super league, just a super college football league. I'm not saying it has to be structured like the NFL, but maybe maybe some of the influences could come from the NFL. And then potentially having like a super Power Five conference where you have different divisions, and I guess the divisions could serve as like a mini conference. But just see what happens with that, because if I don't think conferences are relevant. What are your thoughts, Troy?
No, man, the conference thing, yeah, that's completely irrelevant now. If you want to be honest, like, look at the new Pac-12, right? Dude, it's the same as the Mountain West. I mean, it might as well have just become the Mountain West, in all honesty. So, man, yeah, it's kind of sad to see. Like, I liked those kind of regional rivalries a little bit. I
Same
enjoyed
here.
seeing, yeah, I enjoyed seeing like Oregon go down there and play ASU or U of A, and watching those schools compete, and what is it, Pac-12 after dark, like that was awesome. And it has become more obvious that it's just a money grab at this point, right?
Sure.
And I don't know who it's really benefiting. I mean, people, the NCAA wants to come down on these players, and then players are pointing their fingers at the NCAA. But it's one of those things that, yeah, I just don't see. It's definitely not benefiting the fan base at all, right? So because, dude, I don't want to see Oregon play Rutgers. Like I don't care
Yeah, exactly.
for a conference game. You know what I mean? Like late in the season, I just don't care to see that. I want to see them go down there and play Washington State or some school a little bit closer, one that they have a little bit of a history with. But man, yeah, I don't know, and it's just so hard to keep track of where all these schools are going now. And there's just so many schools that are in conferences. You're like, that just does not make sense, right? The Texas State thing. Now, if you told me Texas State was leaving to go to the Mountain West, I think it would make okay sense, right? But they're going to the Pac-12, or it just doesn't make sense for me. So,
Troy, and I think for football enthusiasts like you and I think what was awesome about the old conference alignment was every conference or every region had their own style. So, when you were watching Pac-12 football or Pac-10 football, you were going to get more of your quarterbacks. You were going to see them playing wide open football, kind of slinging the ball around. But then you watch a Big Ten game, you knew it was going to be great offensive line play, running the ball. You were just going to see those big tough guys on the line really having trench battles. And those
yeah.
games are going to be lower scoring. You watch an SEC game, you're going to get dynamic defense, great defensive back play, couple massive guys in the trenches that were probably going to get drafted. So I miss that. Big 12, same thing. You were going to get a lot of tough running back plays. So I don't know, Troy. I think for me growing up, I used to like watching different games throughout the day and just compare the different styles and the different personalities that each conference kind of had.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. Like I said, the Pac-12 is like one of my best examples. I liked watching Pac-12 football. Did I think that they like deserved a shot at the BCS title all the time? No, I remember they were always arguing for that. But I enjoyed watching that a little bit more than what I watch now, right? So, but yeah, man, those regional games were a little bit different. I know like the biggest complaints early on were like, hey, if you're like in the Pac-12, you schedule someone in the SEC, you lose early on, that hurts your chances on getting into like getting a BCS berth, or making the top four, making the college semifinals or whatever when they first started that. But I don't know. I think scheduling, you could go about a different way now. I think since the playoffs have expanded, I think it's a little bit easier to kind of just go back to like the regional games, right? The regional conferences, and I think it would still be obtainable to make a playoff run, right? So, but I kind of wish you could schedule maybe like an SEC opponent later on in the schedule, or or an SEC opponent maybe, or an SEC school maybe schedule like an ACC opponent down the line, and not play all your out of conference games all at once. The first four games of the season. Maybe add an out of conference opponent later on. I know the SEC schools usually play like an FCS school or something later on in their season. But I think there's ways to kind of get around it now and make it better. But uh, it seems like the more that they change, the crazier it's getting, the harder it is to get or to follow up with. But, we'll see how it goes.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll definitely have to see how it goes. So, Troy, kind of looking back at some of your RFCS schools, some of our D2, D3 schools, do you think with how the NIL or the new college football rules have changed, do you think that players have a better opportunity of going to one of these smaller schools and then getting recruited from there to a bigger D1? Or do you think it's better if they go that route to a smaller D2 or a smaller FCS school? Or do you think they should still try and get a big offer outside of, you know, right out of high school? And again, I know your 5-star blue chips, they're going to obviously go straight out of high school, but I'm kind of looking at those maybe 2-star, 3-star guys that they know at a small program, they could start right away, they could get a lot of playing time. compared to, okay, they go to a bigger school, and then they might be sitting the bench 2, 3 years, and that's if their school is not constantly recruiting in the portal.
Yeah, honestly, I think if you're in high school now, it's definitely a lot. I mean, it's challenging to get a big D1 offer. Just just the way that the transfer portal is and everything like that. I do say we talked a little bit about walking on and stuff like that. That's always an option, but I always say, go somewhere where you're going to be wanted. In this day and age, you might be presented with another opportunity to transfer out and go. I mean, we see this happen all the time. Guys go from the FCS level to the D1 level, and then we've even had a couple D3 guys, D2 guys go up to that level and make big changes to that program. Sometimes you just need the opportunity. So yeah, man. I don't know. I think if you're in high school, I mean, just be open to whatever comes your way, right? Don't get discouraged if you're not getting that big time offer. If you're not getting that offer from U of A, uh, you might have to do a year at UT Permian Basin or something like that. So, which you could still have a fun career there. You could still experience big time college football and have a good time. So yeah, just be open minded, especially this day and age. It's going to be a little bit harder to get into these schools.
And Troy, I mean, don't get me wrong, in the past, there's been excellent athletes that have come out of these smaller programs, these smaller divisions. But what I kind of like about these new rules is I think you're going to see a lot more high level high school football players signed with smaller programs simply because I think roster spots for high school students are going to be limited. Since I want to say most big time college programs, they're going to carry a lot more transfers on scholarship than they are high school players. So this is a great opportunity for one, these players should go to a place where they're wanted. They're going to be developed by some really good coaches and then transfer out, or you just stay there compared to, like you said, walking on or kind of being buried under the depth chart. And then you might get a look by your senior year after that. So it's interesting. I'm excited to see Troy just the depth and the level of talent that's going to these smaller programs. It's going to make college football a lot more fun. It's going to make the quality, the product that we're seeing on the field so much better. So,
The more we discuss this, Chris, it's almost like what's going to happen to JUCOs. You know what I mean? Like,
ooh, I didn't think of that. Yeah,
yeah, it's just it's tough now because you can go, obviously they're still a thing and, they're more accepting to like, the academic side if you're not getting your academics taken care of in high school. But man, what's that going to do for the JUCO world? You know what I mean? So, especially, I mean, I don't know, you go to like these universities and stuff and you can go and recruit. I mean, you're going to see some solid, usually, I mean, you're going to see someone that has, had some pretty good experience coming from those ranks and, might have their academics all taken care of and they don't have to deal with the JUCO thing.
you're right. That's interesting. What is going to happen to JUCO? As well as, I think one positive thing about the rule changes is each, at least I know each FBS program, they're increasing their scholarships to 105. So that's a positive thing. More players will be on scholarship, but it's just going to depend who are those players that will be sorted out for, right?
Yeah.
With that being said, Troy, one concern that I do have about NIL and just kind of how the money's flowing in college football is I think there's going to be more temptation for players to act inappropriately with all this money flowing in. Just you don't know what boosters are going to be asking for what. You don't know what's going to corrupt some of these student athletes. Look at the whole Brendan Sorby situation, Troy. I mean, here's a young man balled out at balled out at Cincinnati, I believe.
Yeah.
The top. I think he was the top quarterback prospect in the portal. Goes to Texas Tech. Texas Tech throws a bunch of money at him. Next thing you know, he's getting suspended for betting on games. And well, I don't know. Actually, Troy, let me rewind. I don't think he got suspended yet. I think they're in the process of looking at if he needs to be suspended. I think he turned himself in and went into a gambling rehab And then from there, his eligibility's kind of been up in the air. I know it went to the courts. It went through the legal system. I know at one point it was looking like he was ruled where he was ineligible to play by the NCAA, and then I think a federal judge, which may or may not have could have had ties to Texas Tech, he ruled in favor of Brendan Sorby. Brendan Sorby was eligible to play, and then I know some other things kind of happened with that. And I think finally Troy's going into the supplemental draft, where if you all do not know what the supplemental NFL draft is a team could give up a future draft pick or future draft compensation to get a player that, for whatever unique circumstances, was not eligible for the regular draft. And in Brendan Sorby's case, he was going to put his name in the hat for the 2027 draft. But now that he's in limbo, he's trying to see if the team will take basically a waiver on him and give him some draft compensation. So we'll see what happens with that. Interesting stuff, Troy. I mean, what do you feel about that? If a player was involved in gambling, are you, would you give him a second chance, or would you say, hey, lifetime ban, we're going to give him the Pete Rose treatment? What would you do?
It's tough, Chris. I remember, I mean, you know what it was like being 20, 21 years old. I mean, you had a ton of money at that age, right? So you're just
Heck
flashing
no.
around campus.
Nah, that's you. You
That's
had
why you
all
had
the
that
money.
chain around your neck.
You were the one always taking us to Golden Corral. You were spinning big.
I saw you cruising around that Buick and stuff. I'm like, damn, man, Chris is big baller Chris over here.
Shut the
No,
heck up.
no, man. I'm kind of with you on that. It's a little concerning to see like what happens if you give a 21-year-old that much money and see what they're gonna do. Man, it's hard for me to you know sports betting is if you're involved that heavily in it, it's wrong, right? So like it's you can easily be fixing games. You can kind of cause like a huge ripple effect there. I don't, man, I don't know. I obviously I think the way that they're handling it right now is probably the right way to go about it. It's being fought in the court, and I think you kind of just have to let that process play out.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think going forward, yeah, I mean, if you're affiliated in any type of way into these sports and you're betting on it or whatever, yeah, I mean, they probably need to, come down on you somehow, right? So I don't know how to answer that. Obviously, you don't want kids fixing games, and because that's going to take the integrity out of, the sport itself. It's going to kind of take that away, and that could kill a fan base, right?
Mm.
But, in some aspects, I think. But
No,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I agree, Troy, because essentially you could almost compare that to insider trading with stocks, right?
Yep.
Where it's like, if you already have the information, it's unfair. And again, it takes away the integrity of the game. If I'm watching my favorite team play and the running back, he's not scoring, he's losing the game because he's trying to get to a certain line or a certain, betting line or whatever the case is, I would be highly upset because it takes away the integrity as a fan. I think when it comes to sports betting, if you're a fan and you are unaffiliated with anything, whether it's the coaching, playing, supervising, or the administrative aspect of the team, go right ahead. Go crazy with it. But if you're involved and you could actually influence the outcome of the game, there has to be consequences. Like I'm not
Yeah.
saying necessarily it has to be a lifetime ban, but I think you should easily get suspended for the year. And if you do it again, you're kicked out. You're done. And again, it depends on
Yeah.
obviously the severity and everything like that. But
Yeah, man. I agree with you 100% on that. It's tough because these are obviously like young kids going through it, but man, yeah, if you're gonna compromise, the integrity of the game like that, yeah, you definitely the NCAA needs to come down on you. But I don't know. It's tough right now. It's tough when you give kids that much money and let them, run around and do what they need to do, right? Or
but
let them do what they typically do.
but see, Troy, and again, I'm trying to rationalize it because again, when you're young and you come into some money, sometimes you're not mature enough to make logical decisions or just high quality decisions. But I don't know, Troy. I'm thinking like maybe I'm just broke, but I'm like, man, these kids, not only are they getting, they're on scholarships, so they're getting all their school paid for. They're leaving with a degree. They're getting fed. Plus, they're able to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. They're getting paid for the video games. They're getting paid for their jersey sales. They're in commercials now, so they're getting money off of that.
They have a lot more than what a lot of people had in the past, right?
Exactly. Plus, they're getting paid a salary directly from the university,
Yeah.
and and they're getting paid by collectives. I'm like, it comes to a point where how much more do you need, Troy? I'm like, if you're a top prospect and you're making like $2 million a year plus endorsements, plus I'm sure these athletes are taking out insurance. So if anything happens to them, they're going to be set up. They're also getting, again, they're getting a place to live. They're getting great food. You, they're getting catered to at these programs, especially if they're scholarship players. I don't know, Troy. To me, I'm like, what more do you need?
Yeah. Man, yeah, these days, I mean, they're actually getting money. They're actually making, money off their name, image, and likeness. That wasn't a thing before. So I'm with you on that, Chris. So
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I just think there's a lot of greedy characters. What in the famous words of Biggie, right, Troy? More money, more problems, right? So hey,
and Chris Love
it's
has a lot more. It has way more problems. So Chris,
no, but I mean it's real talk though. More money, more
yeah,
problems, and I think the problem is anytime big money is being exchanged, Troy, we know this, and this isn't just in sports, but we see this in all aspects of life. Anytime big money's getting exchanged, it brings a lot of shady characters. And
yeah,
unfortunately,
and
you just hope that these college athletes aren't getting mixed up with a lot of these shady characters. So
yeah, no, man, yeah, it can kind of kill the fun part of the game, right? So
exactly. Speaking of that, Troy, speaking of big money, I must tell you, I better not see LSU lose a dang game this year, man, because they have what, like a $70 million NIL purse. They're bringing in Lane Kiffin. They're giving him what, over $100 million to be this superstar coach and basically to be your guys' savior. So, Troy, I better not hear excuses during the year if LSU starts losing games or it's looking bad, because I'm gonna say what happened to that $70 million purse? What happened to you guys just buying all your linemen Lambos and
hey,
Ferraris and all this nonsense?
hey, I don't want to hear it, Chris, because LSU is not on the UT plan, right? So they're not going to go out there, spend all that money on a head coach, redo their whole stadium, all for nothing.
What are
All
you
the
talking about? You guys just spent a bunch of money on a new coach.
yeah,
What do you call
yeah,
Lane
but
Kiffin? A
I
hundred
think
plus million dollars?
I think
What?
we're gonna win a national championship with Lane Kiffin, though, Chris. So
Are, are you guys so basically
Sarkeesian, you guys haven't won anything with Sarkeesian yet. I mean, you guys have
he's
been in the
built
playoffs.
he's building something at Texas. Be patient.
I don't want to hear it. Be patient. I mean, for how much they're paying him, I mean, how patient can you be, right?
So no, LSU's on that Texas Tech plan. Just trying to buy themselves a national championship. That's what you guys are doing. You guys are what did you guys just meet with, the NCAA commission and just say, or whoever's the governing commission of college football now? Did you guys basically just write a fat check and say, hey, just give us the championship trophy?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think you could buy a championship. I mean, Texas has already tried to do it and they failed, right?
Yeah, right. Not like LSU. Good Lord.
So, I mean, even, SMU back in the day just hasn't worked out, right? But no, man, yeah, we better not lose a game this year. Hopefully, hopefully they could actually make the championship this year and win it again. But, Lane Kiffin, he brought in, Coach O. I mean, Chris, that's one hell of a recruiter. If you want to get recruited by anyone, it's by Coach O, right? So that dude's a hell of a motivator. But let's talk about, fraud or embezzlement, man. That guy's just getting a fat check from that school. So he's getting paid for being terminated, but he also has a new job with them. Dude, that's straight up, that's
just
criminal, man.
just toxic, man. Just a toxic program. Yeah. You say it, Troy. LSU's a toxic program.
No, I don't want to say it's a toxic program. I'm just laughing at Ed Orgeron's his ordeal there, his whole story. But man, I think Lane Kiffin, first of all, like kind of, putting the NIL stuff aside, I think he's a solid coach. I wasn't a big fan of him at USC, if I'm being honest. When he what something that I respect about Lane Kiffin is whenever he got fired from USC, man, he redid it, or he did it the right way, right? He kind of rebuilt himself. He goes to Florida Atlantic, right, in the Conference USA and completely rebuilds that program. Takes him to a couple 10-win seasons, consecutive bowl wins. Man, I think, and then, he goes and does his stuff at Ole Miss. Obviously, they reach the playoffs. They have a good run there. I respect everything that he's done to this point. You have to respect a coach like that. It's like a Brian Kelly thing, right? Like people are like, where does Brian Kelly go from here? Well, he's probably going to have to go to one of those Conference USA schools. He's probably going to have to go to one of those Mountain West schools or something like that and completely rebuild his name, right? But he did it the right way, and he's going to reshape college football, and I think he was a solid hire for LSU. I was pretty happy about that. If there's a guy out there, it's going to be Lane Kiffin.
We'll see, Troy. Honestly, what I'm expecting during the season, what I'm expecting before the season starts, I should say, is you guys are gonna have a bunch of old men on the team. You guys are gonna have like guys that probably did like 3, 4 years in the NFL, some weird way got a loophole to come back and play, Troy. Probably gonna have like some 28, 29-year-old guys playing for you. So we'll see.
Hey, in the famous words of Caleb Hull, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
My goodness, Troy. See? Typical LSU fan.
No, man, I'm excited for this season. I think it's gonna be a good one. So I'm excited to see what Lane Kiffin does down there in Baton Rouge.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. It's gonna be an excited FBS season. Hey, the FCS, there's going to be many exciting storylines. One team that I've been kind of looking at, Troy, is we know that North Dakota State is transitioning from the FCS level to the FBS level. They were a powerhouse in FCS. What does that do to the FCS now that they moved up? I know, obviously, Troy, they didn't win it last year, I don't believe, but they they've always been a household name. So how does that change the landscape? How does that change the landscape of FCS football a bit?
Man, yeah, that's crazy. So yeah, North Dakota State. I've always wondered how they were going to do in the FBS. They obviously always compete with the FBS schools, if not beat them. They've beat Minnesota. They've beat a whole bunch of big teams in the past. As a matter of fact, if you were an FBS school, you did not want to schedule North Dakota State because if you schedule an FCS opponent, it's supposed to be an easy win, right? Or it's supposed to just get your guys some work. Well, you usually schedule these guys and you get so like that's how that works. But man, I do think losing them, so at the FCS level, losing them, I think it's going to create a ripple effect. I know Tarleton State right now in Texas, in Stephenville, Texas. They were Division II at one point, right? They were in the Lone Star. They've made that transition to D1 AA FC. Chris, I know that they're getting ready to make an FBS run. They are getting there. I mean, their stadium now has like a 25,000 seat capacity. Like
Oh wow.
yeah, they're trying to kind of get ready for the FBS run. I believe that'll be the next team to make that jump. If not, I know one of the Montana schools is getting ready to make that jump. I would say probably University of Montana. I think
Ye-
they would make the jump second. Montana State, they're great. They just won I believe it was their first national title this last season. So I think they're going to want to hang around the D1 AA level a little longer and kind of, hang out there. But man, I don't know. I think it's going to create a ripple effect. I think every year from here on out, we're going to start seeing more and more schools make that jump, and then it's going to be like, there's going to be that question, right? Like, to where it's like, okay, do we have two separate, national titles? So, where you have your power conferences play for a national championship, then you have, your other conferences, I'm
Group
playing
of
for,
five.
yeah, your group of five schools playing for, you know, another championship. But then in my head, Chris, I'm like, okay, then now you're kind of back at that FBS, FCS level. Makes sense. So it's kind of like the
Essentially.
same thing. It's like a trade off. So, so I don't know. Dude, I'd say you give North Dakota State a couple years, maybe if that, and who knows what they do. I think they're going to be pretty good.
Definitely.
It would be cool to see them make a playoff run. I mean, I think that'd be pretty cool. But here's my argument about like small schools making the playoffs, man. I know it's not likely for a small school to beat these bigger schools, right? But that's why you want to watch it, because you want to see that happen. Like, you get those Boise States every year. You get those. There's always that team every year that you always just wonder, right? But now they get their shot. And whether they do anything with it or not, like, it is what it is. But I would rather see them get in and see what happens versus just kind of sit around and just wonder. So, but man, I don't know. We'll see. I think North Dakota State, I think that's a cool move for them. I think that'll be a neat topic throughout the season. And we also have Sacramento State making that move too. But the whole weird thing about that is they are actually going to the MAC, which, dude, that's like all Ohio schools. And, they have UMass in that conference too. So that's a lot of money that's going to be spent.
Definitely, Troy. Troy, I wouldn't mind seeing if Montana State wins another national championship, and they do have a really good run game coming into this season. I wouldn't be surprised to see them make that jump in a couple of years. Maybe they go with University of Montana. So
Yeah.
it'll be curious to kind of keep our eyes on them, see what they do if they win again, or maybe one of these other programs makes that jump. So we'll see.
Yeah. Man, there's a lot of good football at the FCS level. You tune in and watch South Dakota State, these North Dakota State, like all those schools. I mean, it's a fun thing to kind of tune into.
Definitely, Troy. No, it's going to be an exciting year. Hey, Troy, so for our final segment, just real quick as we wrap up the show, I want to ask you a couple questions and I want to quiz your college football knowledge to see what you know, Troy. So, Troy, I want, so, Troy, what school is nestled in the mountains that has the highest decibel rate and the loudest college football fans in FC?
Loudest college football fans in the FCS. Ooh.
And it's kind of due to how they're positioned geographically because their stadium's nestled next to this really huge mountain.
Oh man, I was gonna say Appalachian State, but they're FBS now. Ooh, I know it has to be somewhere on the East Coast. I'm gonna say Wofford.
No. So the loudest fans actually belong to University of Montana
Oh
because
man,
yeah.
why did I was, for whatever reason, I was thinking East Coast. I should have known that one.
So due to their position next to the mountain that they're near, the decibels could get up to 105, Troy,
Yeah,
making it the
yeah.
loudest FCS stadium.
The mountain is, so the stadium itself is about 25,000 people, but the mountain is just right there. So, dude, I've watched some cool like blizzard type of games there. So it's not in person. I've seen them on TV. As speaking of Appalachian State, I've watched them. It was a playoff game between Appalachian State, and it was just a straight up blizzard. So I believe it. I believe it. I should have known that one, man. I messed that up.
Now, Troy, this is actually, I'm going to throw you a bone right here because this is actually a trivia question you asked me to post today. So, Troy, what school has the highest elevation in college football?
If we're not talking D1, we're talking D2 in the RMAC, and that is Western State, Colorado.
Yes,
So,
Western Colorado. They have
and
the
you could fact check me on this too. If we're talking about D1, it's Wyoming.
okay. I'll have to look into that. I'll have to look into that. All right, Troy. So now this is my final question. What college football team makes mayo, peanut butter, and jelly sandwiches before every away game in Division Two football?
You said in Division 2 football?
Yeah, what school makes peanut butter, jelly, and mayo sandwiches as a tradition before every away game?
That is disgusting. I would not engage in that whatsoever. So that superstition would be
Dude,
like out the window for me. Gosh. Yeah, you got to give me a hint here, Chris. Are they on the East Coast, West Coast? Are they centrally located?
they're like centrally located.
Oh man. Okay. Let's narrow down. Is it an Oklahoma school?
It's not an Oklahoma school. Their colors are purple, black, and teal.
Purple, black, and teal.
Yes. And their mascot is a mythical creature.
Chris, you are a mythical creature. Man, teal. The only teal team that I could think of right now was like Shorter University.
You
Mm, damn.
give
I
up?
don't know. I don't know, man. I don't want to give up on that, but mm, yeah. What is it?
I'm messing with you. I don't even know. I just made that up.
How would you even know that?
Hey, Troy. But with that being said, to our viewers, that's something that Troy and I do want to do is bring you fun facts every day because you'll be surprised. There are some really, really awesome college football traditions at all levels. And we really want to showcase and spotlight some of the really, really cool traditions each community has.
Yeah. But no, guys, also thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for the support that you guys have given this page. And hopefully you guys can continue to support it, get behind it. We're having a good time with, with all this. It was just supposed to be, a simple hobby, get on whenever we can. But you guys have really made it a point to where we want to make sure we get you guys, we get out some new content every week if we can. So, but we got a couple of interviews lined up these next few weeks. We're excited to bring them on. So, man, just kind of be ready for those. It'll be a good time.
Definitely. Hey, and to all our fans, all our viewers out there, please continue to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, as well as like, subscribe, and share our YouTube videos. We have really, really good content, and we want to continue to bring you guys this great content. So just continue to support us. Thank you.
Yeah, Instagram has blown up. Yeah, just continue. Let's engage on Facebook a little bit. We just want to keep blowing this thing up because when this season starts, this next season, we want to make sure that, we have a good foundation that we are able to make this season fun for everybody. So yeah, let's just kind of get behind it now and jump ahead. But we appreciate you guys. If you guys have anything, be sure to reach out to us. We usually respond to everybody on our social media platforms. So thank you to all the coaches that are reaching out, wanting to get on the show, and all the players and stuff. Yeah, it's awesome. So
Definitely. And then one last thing, guys, something that we want to bring to you is I'm going to start a Guess Where Chris is at. And over the next month or two, Troy,
throw your house, your
yeah,
bathroom, on the
hey,
toilet.
I will be there as well, Troy. But no, in all seriousness, over the next month or two, we're going to start a Guess Where Chris is at. And I'm going to try to hit a couple high school football camps and some high school football scrimmages and hopefully bring you guys some interviews from the kids. So please tune in for that.
Yeah, yeah. You better not be posting any pictures of like your feet in the bathroom or something. It's like, oh, man.
I'll, hey, I'll leave that to you, Troy. You might put one of your nasty dogs up here. So
Man, but all right, guys. Well, thank you guys, and we'll see you guys next time.